next 30 minutes, I will indeed take you through a totally different lens and perspective to what we've heard so far, which is actually the preparer's perspective and how we've dealt and live the tagging in the reporting process that we have implemented to date at Glencore. My name is Aniko Boender, and I lead the Group IFRS Reporting at Glencore. To give you some context, and in case you don't know about Glencore, we are one of the largest commodity trading and mining company, and marketing and producing more than 60 commodities across the globe. The headquarters are here in beautiful canton of Zug in Switzerland, but we have a global footprint across more than 35 countries and have more than 140,000 employees. We are listed on the Joburg and London Stock Exchange, and here comes the regulation into play. Because of the listing rules and the regulation in the UK, we are required to submit annual financial statements in a structured digital format and had to apply the tagging. And the journey is what I would like to take you through, as well as the document how we've set it up internally. So if we take a quick glance over our project timeline, things have kicked off a few years back. And with the help of Amana and the Smart Notes tool that we had already implemented back then, just on our financial statements, we had kicked off fairly early the process of familiarizing ourselves with the tagging, what that means, how many people do we need to involve internally, what is the project. Luckily, we gained a bit of time because of the delay the FAC announced in late 2020 caused by the pandemic. So we gained a bit of time with the tagging of our primary financial statements. That was obviously the first focus we had to put on, and had therefore the opportunity to do a few dry runs on the 19 and the 2020 numbers until we ultimately tagged the 2021 report, which we released in 2022. So that was just the primary statements, which straight away got us to jump onto the notes tagging, which we first submitted this year, spring. In March, we submitted our report with the tagging. As you can see in the timeline, we even took it beyond, because we actually, although there is no requirement in the UK environment to have an external assurance report, we did engage early with the auditors and got, for the first report that we submitted in 2022 last year, we got Deloitte, our auditors, to submit a reasonable assurance report on the tagging, we went a bit beyond, but I think that is just the way to go. That's how we've perceived it as a company. So that's why we went that last mile as well. And in the next few slides, I would like to take you maybe just one step back first before we talk about the tagging again, is how did we actually get to embrace this digital area, and how did we get to the tagging? And the answer to that is simply Smart Notes. Before Smart Notes, we had, maybe like many other companies, just a simple Word document that goes through some formatting exercise with some corporate design teams and is then ultimately published, maybe with a design company with some fancy design tools as everybody knows them. We started thinking, hold on, the team is getting bigger. We need more people working simultaneously in the report. We need another structure, and we need something that works in a digital format going forward. And here we are. We implemented Smart Notes for the first time for our half-year report 2019. And the way we've set it up is that the financial statements, and it's actually a significant part of the annual report, frankly, is sitting in the Smart Notes tool. But we've gone beyond that. So that is just our half-yearly external requirement that we have. We also produce our quarterly production report in Smart Notes, we prepare it in Smart Notes and produce it out of Smart Notes. And we also use it for some internal documents, such as the group accounting manual, which we have also put into Smart Notes, just because we like the tool and we think it has great functionalities in that regard. So once we have defined the reports that we wanted to maintain and to process in SmartNotes, in the tool itself, a key item in that is in a functioning control environment is obviously the user accessibility. So who needs to do what when, and who has which rights, which is particularly important as well when it comes, I just mentioned it, in a control environment, you want the segregation of duties, you want the correct processes, you want to have a distinction between documents being in process of being prepared, in process of being reviewed or finalized. So you want a full audit trail and a timestamp on all those changes to the document, which is key, and which is also something that is embedded in SmartNotes and that we are working live in our documents. The document itself, it's very much based on MS Office. So we are limiting our reports to using Word and Excel. That means every single note that we produce has at least one Excel table, can have multiple tables, obviously, and then we just link them in the Word document and add the narratives to it. But everything is structured, obviously, in the design that we have chosen from the company, and is centrally managed within SmartNotes and allows us to update changes to fonts, to styles, to just anything that we want, just in a central manner, and apply it across the board. So there's no involvement of an external design company when it comes to these elements in the report themselves. And the structure of the document, I just mentioned it, we would have at least one table per note. Here you see an example. This is just a statement of income, and there is the programming that sits in these various line items that we are pulling. There are some lines that are hidden here. That's why you would also see there are some subtotals. But the programming, I mean, it's fair to say that I think I would say it's more than 50% that I laid out here. It's probably more than 60% of the financial statements that get, once the programming is defined and set up, is being automatically filled, like the tables are automatically filled once the data is uploaded. In our example, we use Hyperion, the Oracle HFM application, to consolidate our financial data on a monthly basis. We do then import the data into SmartNotes, which obviously happens at a half-yearly basis for external reporting purposes, but we've gone also beyond because of the relatively easy accessibility of that data. We are even managing to produce quarterly reports. We are obviously not for external purposes, but for just internal and for our auditors, where we are loading data on a quarterly basis into SmartNotes to just validate the data, re-verify the programming, and just get the narratives going as we are in the preparation phase for a half-year or year-end reporting. So I always say, after the reporting is before the next reporting, so you can never stop getting ready enough for the next external reporting period. And the ease that we have, or that we just experience with SmartNotes, is just the changes as we load them are transparently visible. All the changes get visually marked up. I can see exactly which note had a change. So tracking from one version to the other where numbers are still not solid is very easily traceable, and in every new import clearly displayed. Here, just this a portion or a structure of our report. So we have a cockpit. We see obviously which document is in which status. That's particularly important for me as I review the whole document, and I have different people accessing different sections, and therefore the workflow and the completion status is crucial, just also because of the limited time that we have in the preparation phase. And we also go beyond the production of the report, which I've not mentioned earlier, but embedded in SmartNotes, we even have the IFRS disclosure checklist. That means that every user that is accessing the document and filling information just around the numbers, or even if it's just manual data inputs that need to be completed in the notes. We do have other tags than text box tags, which are just the IFRS tags, and we do have a fully tagged report for IFRS disclosure purposes, which the auditors love, obviously, as you can imagine. And we also prepare that throughout the year. So this is not a year-end task. We do it well ahead, but everything is embedded in the document. And ultimately, we had to get the document to that point to finally get then into the digital area, which is the XBRL tagging. So when we started the project again, obviously with Amana, the module was probably not fairly new, but it certainly was new to us, and it required also some training and knowledge on how to apply the different tags. Obviously, the ease to just be able to navigate the taxonomy, you see it here on the right-hand side, it's just embedded in the tool. The taxonomy, you can use the search function, you can filter. There's all kind of functionalities, but you still need to know which tag goes where, right? And that's where the big knowledge or the experience we gain from it, that's where it was pivotal to just get the support from Amana to understand where we need to focus on. And once the taxonomy is loaded, there is this tagging. It's sort of a drag and drop from the right-hand side to the left-hand side, as you can see here. All the green fields means there is a tag sitting behind them. The ones that are not tagged, some of these lines, they are actually hidden in the external report, and that's why those obviously don't require a tag to be applied to. And the smart thing about Smart Notes is that we don't need to do the work twice. We don't need to repeat it every year. And that's not only to the tagging, but everything that we do in Smart Notes is rolled forward in the following financial year. So it's the press of a button and the document gets prepared for the next reporting period. And to just quickly stay on the tagging as such, I mean, the tagging of the primary statements, that's one thing. It's a fairly limited number of lines, although those statements, I mean, cash flow statement goes over 2 pages. It's quite a few lines, but it's not changing that much from year to year. Where the narratives and the text block tagging that comes with it, it's much more extensive. It also sounds fairly easy to just apply the text blocks across the board, but I think it's around 250 text blocks that were available. I think around 90 we did not even use, but still we applied over 400 text blocks tags in our document. More is not always better. That's for sure. It certainly is also resulting from the fact or from just how our report is structured, and that we have some of the headers of certain notes repeating on top of each page, which we just didn't want to include in a tag. So we then decided to retag the section freshly and create all these continuations. But we do also have duplicate mappings, taggings that's also existent. And just the mere fact that we don't need to touch all of these again the following year, that's a massive time benefit. The review of it is time consuming enough, but not the creation every year freshly. So that is a big advantage. And I can only say we have fully integrated the process in our financial preparation phase as we live the document on a daily basis. There's hardly any week that we don't access it for whatever reason. Either it's an update to a note that we are aware of, or numbers, or we create new accounts in our chart of accounts, and we know already we need to adjust the programming in Smart Notes in order to receive the data. So as we work in our consolidation tool, we work in parallel with Smart Notes in order to be always up to date. And at any point in time, we could actually load data and prepare a full set of financial statements. The validation, I haven't touched on that yet. We've spoken just earlier with Catalina. There are obviously validations, just simple cross-checks, which also help massively just across the notes, verifying does the depreciation that we display in the cash flow match actually the depreciation of our PPE table, movement table. It's just really simple things, but we have gone to the extent wherever possible, we've created a validation for it, which helps us just ensuring that different people accessing different sections and responsibilities are spread within the team, that also these validations talk to what's happening across those sections. So that's a really pivotal check that we do. And the same thing applies to the tagging, the duplicate mappings, the invalid calculations. All these items get checked for us in SmartNotes. We can then react right away. We don't need for the auditors to load this into their audit tool and get back to us with a long list. They still come back with a long list and we debate on a lot of things. But there's a good sense check and data quality that we can already prepare well ahead of them even starting to look at the report. And obviously the other benefit is once we are comfortable, the numbers have settled, we are not changing anymore. Everybody has had a review. Also the narratives are settling down. We get all the reviewer comments, and we are producing the report. It is a click of a button, literally, to just generate this XBRL structured file, the zip file that we need to submit to the FCAs. We load it onto the national storage mechanism. That's just the FCA's storage data tool that they are using. But it's all there. It's just one report that literally needs to be uploaded. We used also the functionality that the FCA on the national storage mechanism have provided to go through some validation checks that are built there. Similar, we've heard it before with the US. There are similar validations happening on every report that is uploaded, but you can also do some test runs. And we also took advantage of these test runs to just ensure that the timely reporting of our structured report is actually happening within the same day of the release of our annual report. So it's happening simultaneously as the report is being released on our webpage. I am busy producing the zip file and getting it ready for upload. So it's literally happening one after the other pretty fast. We spoke about that. The financial statements, as I mentioned, that's the part that is produced in SmartNotes. We don't produce the full or prepare the full annual report in SmartNotes for different internal reasons. We just have multiple teams working in different sections, and we just have not found a way to get everybody to work with that tool just yet. That's why there is the front half, we call it, of the annual report still produced in a classic PDF format, which is from an InDesign tool with our design company. And we ultimately then package it up with the back half and produce the XHTML document to just, put a nice bow around it. And but it can't be neglected that the PDF document for some people still has some priorities. It's just that's the nice glossy document that is on the web page. It has a nice cover page, and that's what some people just want to have in their hand. We still print them. But we are all aware this is not the official document, because the official document is the XHTML document that we submit. Therefore, even though we still are a bit, in that sense, old school with some other elements because of also design purposes, we managed to package up the full report, and it's still a fair part of it. If we say the annual report counts around probably 260, 70, 80 pages, about half of that is produced in SmartNotes. So it's still a fairly big part, and definitely all the part that needs some tagging. And when you see the output of the report, here just a few pages, obviously I said, a glossy front cover, and the PDF that would be produced, the inline XBRL to the right-hand side. You see the tagging happening, you see the text block tagging. So everything, the look and feel of the whole document, whether it's printed or whether it's inline XBRL, is fairly similar. That's the least to say. And and ultimately, what are the next steps? We've heard it now in the last few days. What is upon us is obviously the ESG reporting. I think that's a totally other level of reporting, because it's now touching on exactly that front half and a lot of narrative tagging and disclosures, which I think all of us, and preparers in particular, need to get their head around it. Obviously, we have a lot of information already disclosed somewhere in the report, but how do we present it? Do we need to maybe reshape certain elements in our report to make then the tagging also appropriately fit? So I think that thinking process is what we are currently going through internally. I also have to admit it's a separate reporting team, with whom we are obviously sharing knowledge and supporting them with the tagging experience that we've now gained over the last 3 years. But it's definitely a different level of reporting which needs to be thought through. And it could well be that at that point, Smart Notes will become the more prominent tool in our company, because that would just be the one tool that could host everything. The other option is to do some bits and pieces outside and then combine it back again. I don't know yet where the journey is. For now, we've run off an internal project, just a gap analysis to verify which of these new requirements have not been disclosed somewhere in the financials yet. Do we need to still find a way to collect the data? Do we have it in-house? So that data gap analysis is happening as we speak. But I think, again, we are well ahead, and we will be able to report definitely the ISSB, the European Sustainability Report Standard. That's a bit different because we are in the UK, obviously. So some of our subsidiaries that we have in the EU might be impacted directly by them having to report into that European standard. But the group as such, the group level reporting, and that's what I meant here, which is the Glencore group as such, being located here in Switzerland and having the reporting into the UK, is just at a much later stage that we would be impacted by such requirements. But the ISSB, and that's definitely one that I'm keen on getting onto, is the next one, the next challenge to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to hear from an issuer at Data Amplified. So it's really interesting seeing how you've gone through the challenge of implementing this year. So thank you very much for taking us through that. Does anyone have any questions? I have a couple of burning questions, so if you don't mind, I'll go first because I don't see any hands rising. I'm interested in the audit process, which you mentioned. Kind of, how did that work? Can you say a little bit more about it? What kind of value did it add? What sort of things did they pick up and help?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I think it was a big learning curve for the auditors too.
Are they here, by the way?
No, they're not here.
That's okay then.
I only figured out fairly late in the process that we are quite exotic in the sense that we even asked for an assurance report. For me, when we started engaging with them and talked them through the project that we were running, for me it was just a natural next thing to engage with the auditors and get their views and exchange the tagging. Just the tagging that we are planning on doing. But back then, 3 years back, also some of these audit tools, I think, were not that developed yet, frankly. So I think there's a big learning curve that they had to go through. And interestingly, very often we just found a middle ground where I can say that the points raised, I'm not saying that they had invalid points. Obviously, their audit tool, whatever they've used, spit out something that made us pause and think. And in some cases, we, in particular with the text block tagging, which I think it's much more judgmental, where some of the areas are not clearly. So there is a description, but the reference to the standard is not always 100% clear. And we might have interpreted something that they've interpreted differently. And then it was just a matter of sitting down and discussing those points. So it's less on the technicalities, but really on how we interpret certain descriptions in the text block tagging. And then obviously there are some also relatively, I call it basic items that we also had to learn from. Just the sign logic, picking up on the sign logic. How is it something displayed in the tool versus how does it come out of the in the XHTML report, the XBRL viewer? It's just to learn also to read both languages to understand how to move forward. But because of the validations implemented in the tool, we were a bit ahead because calculation errors, there wouldn't be any. It's all dealt with, right? Duplicate mappings, there wouldn't be any. That's why it's more on the interpretive side where you can really have a discussion and find a middle ground on where to go. And the granularity, obviously, of the tagging. That was a big ask that they had. Luckily, we were prepared, so that's why it's not out of the blue that we came up with 400 tags. This was to just keep it to the lowest level possible. We always said deleting is easy. We can always go back and remove if we did something that they wouldn't have expected us to do. But it turned out that that's exactly what they were looking for. So ultimately, the granularity was a big topic on the audit side as well.
Useful to know for ESRS, for sure. 400 tags, maybe a few more for ESRS. Brilliant. Jennifer.
That's correct, yes. Absolutely. And that's just the next step, this next journey that we will need to take. But that's exactly it. So that the tagging as we know it to date in our reporting is simply focused on the financial statements. Sure, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one other, if you
Sure.
don't mind, before I let you go, is around whether you've had any kind of feedback on this. Obviously, the accounts are out, and whether you've had any feedback at all from users as to whether it's useful.
Actually not.
I think I know the answer, but
I thought I'd ask anyway. Which is pretty sad, because you go through this exercise and you still, and I'm pretty sure it's being used, but I don't know how. And I would also not know if some people had some comments. Unfortunately, it would be really fruitful to have a discussion with some of the users, us being the preparer side. But no, unfortunately not. Not one single question.
Worth a try.